What's happening YouTube? Cowboy here and welcome back to another Dragon Age Inquisition build video, this time around taking a look at the two-handed Reaver tank. So of course this is the class that I have the second most experience on, aside from Iron Bull being one of the mains for the walkthrough. I also have Biggest Dickus, the legendary dwarf with the drunk through that runs this build. Now in general, two-handed Reaver tank has a ton of sustainability that keeps it alive, while you lack the blocking capacity and defenses of a sword and shield warrior tank. You make up for it in your ability to rip health back from your enemies. You also have excellent AoE capacity, probably close to being the best in the game, making you a major threat on the battlefield in my opinion. And that's what makes a two-handed tank extremely potent, is not only are you able to hold aggro and generate massive amounts of guard, you're also able to basically keep up with the best of them in terms of damage. So going into what makes a two-handed Reaver tank, of course, let's start off with our tanking abilities in the Vanguard tree. We're going to pick up Warcry initially, along with Call to Arms to give us the armor bonus. Now, obviously there's two taunts available. Between Warcry and Challenge, Challenge is only going to give you 10% guard, and it's going to focus a single enemy, though it is for 8 seconds, whereas Warcry is going to be for 4 seconds, which is half the duration, but you're getting 20% guard per enemy. So in general, I would prefer to have an AoE taunt, especially because of the fact that we have AoE abilities. So overall, I went for Warcry, felt it was the stronger choice. Moving down from there, we're also going to get Charging Bull, along with the secondary of Gore and Trample, which is an awesome move. It's going to give you mobility, it's going to let you get over to that enemy that's becoming a threat to your party, and it's going to give you some guard generation. So obviously, as being a two-handed tank, the hardest thing is going to be surviving. And what's great about these two abilities is, let's say there's 3 enemies, as there is up ahead. We charge on in, we're getting 10% guard per enemy. So if you hit all 3, you're at 30%. Once you're in, you pop Warcry, you get 20% per enemy, so you're up another 60%, basically putting you at 90% guard as soon as the fight starts. So that gives you a lot of guard generation, and then from there on out, your self-healing and additional guard generation through fighting is going to be enough to sustain you. Basically, that's how you have your tank ability. So following up on that, also make sure you pick up Cutting Words so that while the targets are taunted, your party is doing a 20% bonus to damage. And then additionally, we'll want Untouchable Defense, giving us a 25% bonus to our maximum guard. Moving over into the two-handed tree, and initially when I first played with Bull, I tried going down this route with him, Guard Smasher, Pommel Strike for the stun, Flawless Defense so he could block, and I found that in general a two-handed tank was more effective when it was just up in the enemy's face doing damage and bashing through it than when it was actually blocking and playing like a tank should. So first of all, we're going to grab Mighty Blow, which is a great move for some upfront burst damage. It also will knock targets down, incapacitating them for a short while. Move down to Shield Breaker, not all that important because there's plenty of abilities that sunder armor, but we need it for progression. Whirlwind, along with Rising Winds, pretty much the most incandescent spin-to-win move I've ever seen in a game. It is so amazing. So to start, we're getting 70% weapon damage per hit. As our Whirlwind sustains, we get an extra 15% bonus damage per rotation, and additionally, when coupled with Clear a Path, it effectively allows you to just spin to win indefinitely as long as there's 2 enemies. Because in general, you have 100 base stamina. There's things that can increase that further, obviously, but this costs 10 stamina. This gives us 10%, which at 100 stamina, that's 10, for each extra target. So basically, if you're hitting 2 enemies, your Whirlwind just keeps going and going and going. And as it keeps going, you're getting an extra 15% damage per rotation, effectively turning into just a massive tornado of steel and death, which is awesome. So lastly, following up, we are of course going to grab Earth-Shaking Strike, a great blow that tears open the ground with its shockwave, and of course we're going to pick up Shattered Ground as well. Now at first glance you may be looking at Shattered Ground and going 20% weapon damage per second. That doesn't seem like a lot, but the important thing to remember with two-handed is that your weapon has very high damage. Now, in comparison to the Rogue, whose weapons I'm taking off for some unknown reason, we have 381 DPS, but they only have 137 AoE damage. Looking at Iron Bull, we can see even though the DPS is less, we have 256 AoE damage. So because we have that top end damage on weapons, even though it's only 20%, it does make it worthwhile in my opinion. Plus, Fire absolutely shatters guard, making this a great move to use against those guard enemies if you don't already have a Fire Mage in your party. And additionally, while you may say 50 stamina, that's an expensive cost, the other thing to remember is that with Gore and Trample, we can basically charge an enemy and then immediately drop out Earthshaking Strike without any cost on it, which is awesome. So now that we've covered the two-handed and tanking abilities, let's hop over into the Reaver tree, and there's really nothing we don't want here. Everything in this tree is fantastic. I'm not a big fan of Rampage, only because it affects yourself, and I feel that the other moves are going to be better, but, you know, if you're a fan of Rampage, go for it. I would put it in place of Pommel Strike, but either way, let's go into the skills. First up, we got Ring of Pain. Now, the way this works is you drop this ring down, everything within that 15 meters will be taking 15% weapon damage per second. And additionally, you're getting a 1% bonus to your damage for each 1% of missing health. Now we're also going to want to pick up Torrent of Pain, which makes it so Devour costs less stamina, has a shorter cooldown, and Dragon Rage costs less of our own health, because Dragon Rage and Devour are the two primary abilities that we're going to be using in the Reaver tree, since Ring of Pain is pretty much just like drop down and you leave it. Once you put it down, until you run out of stamina, it just stays down, which is awesome. And one important thing I do want to mention about this is earlier I talked about how you could do Whirlwind and basically sustain Whirlwind indefinitely as long as there's two enemies. If Ring of Pain is out, because Ring of Pain is costing 10 stamina per second and your Whirlwind is costing 10 stamina per spin, if you're going to sustain them both, you're going to need about 3 to 4 enemies. So keep that in mind. You know, if once Ring goes down, if there's enough, Whirlwind. If there's 2 or less, don't Whirlwind. So moving down from Ring of Pain, I'd suggest going to Fervor first. Even though it's only for 5 seconds, a 30% damage boost is quite significant anytime an enemy dies. And then moving down from there, we have Scented Blood, which every time an enemy is below 35% health, we get a 50% speed bonus, which mobility is king on a two-hander, and we get a 10% critical chance hit, which is just awesome. You know, I love critical hit chance. So moving over from there, we're going to pick up Devour. And this is where your main sustainability comes from. It does 100 weapon damage, and additionally we get 2% bonus damage for each 1% missing health. Now the important thing to note here is that with Ring of Pain down, we get 0.4% for every 1% of health that's lost. So in short, if you're at 50% health and you use Devour, you're going to get back approximately 20% of your health. And because of that, we can effectively sustain our health bar just indefinitely through constantly using Devour. Moving down from there, we're going to get Dragon Rage, which is a really nice single target burst ability. On the Drunk Through, of course, I have Mark of the Rift, so I put this in the replacement slot for Pommel Strike. And then I had the extra slot, which is where you would put your Rift ability. That's also what I would suggest if you want to use Rampage as well. But in short, Dragon Rage is going to go for 150% weapon damage. It also has the 1% bonus for each missing health, each 1% of missing health, and you get a damage bonus for Ring of Pain now. Now, the way this works is Dragon Rage pulls health away from you as you attack. So it's basically, you keep using Dragon Rage, and while it's up, your guy just wails away at enemies and tears through them, giving you a nice single target ability as a two-handed warrior. And then once the cooldown's up, you use Devour, rip back that health, and then go back to smashing face with Dragon Rage. Additionally, we of course are going to want to pick up the bonus here, making it so that Dragon Rage is going to hit harder and reduce the cooldown time for Devour with every attack, making it so that you can alternate between those two abilities even faster. And then just to add to the deliciousness of this pot, because we can only have 8 abilities, we are also going to pick up Consume, giving an extra 25% critical hit chance every time we use Dragon Rage after Devour. So we are going to also go down this side of the tree. Blood Frenzy, 5% damage for each 10% of missing health. As I said, you'll hover right around 50%. So it's basically a static 25% damage bonus as long as you're at that health threshold. And then, of course, Terrifying Fury, 25% fear chance on critical hits. And in general, we have a pretty high critical hit chance as a warrior. And, you know, you might think, well, I don't want my enemies running away. But at the end of the day, this is crowd control. And crowd control is especially important when you're playing on Nightmare. So I would suggest grabbing Terrifying Fury as well. So all in all, it's a very simple build to do. You know, we have 2 main tank abilities. We have 3 main two-handed abilities, and then we have our 3 Reaver abilities, and it's pretty easy to play as long as you properly flow your abilities. Like I said, you have to keep an eye on your stamina if you're going to Whirlwind while Ring of Pain is down. Primarily against 2 targets or below, I'm going to be alternating between Devour and Dragon Rage, and you need to properly use your Charging Bull along with Warcry to taunt and give yourself proper guard generation. Now, of course, going into the inventory, the weapon, pretty much make the biggest thing you can. Some things that I like to go for are Constitution. Obviously, I used Dragon materials here to get an even split of Constitution and Strength. But because we're health-based, I feel that Constitution is king in some cases over Strength. You know, in general, if I have a choice between like 10 Constitution and 10 Strength, I'll usually take the Constitution. Obviously, if I can get an even split, the Dragon materials gave me, I mean, the 3 and 3 is the highest I was able to get. Like, a straight Constitution bonus would have only been 5, so I will take an even split in that case. As for Masterwork, I would highly suggest going for on hit gain 3 guard, just to give us more guard generation while we're in combat. And of course, critical hit chance is going to help quite a bit, because we already have the perk that's going to fear enemies. So with that, before we go, first thing we need to do is make sure she is set to off. Additionally, gonna just put her in stealth just for good measure. So in general, I would suggest rushing in with Charging Bull first. Get yourself a little bit of guard generation in addition to making your first Earth-shaking strike completely free. What's up, buddy? Oh no, we got stuck in water. We're dropping it out anyway. We don't care. So we need to beat down these guys. You can see the big chunk of health we managed to pull back right there. We're going to pull down Ring simply because we're not really close to that guy anymore. Get him on this one. You can see the health coming back. And don't be afraid to use a healing potion. I mean, especially if you're right now, like I am, playing solo, which in general, you know, you shouldn't really be playing solo at all, but sometimes you do crazy things. So, yanked health back away from him, and all we have left is this guy trying to smash my face in. So, Earth-shaking strike, fire bonus is innately powerful against guard, so that'll help out quite a bit. Level 20 behemoth. Ooh, oh, he smashed the rogue. For a second, I was like, shit, bro. We're gonna get down Ring, and we're gonna lay into him with dragons. Fuck your guard. Oh, my stamina. No, my Ring's gonna fall off. I need to get hits on him. He's gonna actually... I can't get enough hits on this bastard to get it back up. I'm gonna have to ask you to stop, bro. This is getting really annoying. Our rogue's just chilling there. Even as a two-hander, that we're able to tank these big hits coming out. Right, get that down. Rip some health back off of them. If we have the opening, Dragon Rage will absolutely tear through that. Stun them real fast. Make it so our Devour costs to nothing. Our Ring went down, unfortunately. Man, you are just one beefy asshole, aren't you? There we go. Dragon Rage tearing it up. And Dragon Rage really is a cool move because he's literally just like ripping through people with his hands. So, all in all, I mean, obviously you don't have never-ending OP barriers or the ability to use stealth indefinitely as you do with the rogue, but you have quite a bit of healing, and against an enemy that's not generating 100% guard every other second and knocking you down, you can hold your own pretty well. I mean, we used, what, 3 potions? Not bad for fighting that solo on Nightmare, in my opinion. So before we wrap things up, of course, once again, it is time to take on a rift with the full party. One thing I wanted to address real fast is I forgot to talk about future choices as you continue to level up in terms of what I would suggest working towards. Although you don't really care for block and slash at all, Flow of Battle is an excellent passive to pick up with a tree like this, since the cooldown reduction is just going to help you even further to be able to use your Devour more frequently. And moving on from there into the Battle Master tree, though it is 3 points in, I'd suggest working your way towards Deep Reserves, just because, as you saw in the solo fight, quite frequently you're at that low stamina threshold, and the bonus stamina generation will certainly help. So, with that being said, let's head on in, smash this rift. We of course did make sure to turn the AI back on, and ooh man, there's a whole slew of enemies here. This is going to be great. So, we haven't got to show you guys how spin to win works. This is how spin to win works. As you can see, our stamina is pretty much not moving, and we're able to just hold this and hold it and just molest everything. Very, very powerful when done right. Anybody else? Anybody else want to fight? Full guard already. Use our charge to get the free cast on our Devour. Man, we just crapped all over that rift. And that's it. Wrong one. Pop it, Inquisitor. So either way, guys, definitely a really fun class to play. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could even go more offensive and drop the tanking moves out altogether. Personally, I think it's unnecessary, you know. I think that two-handed is able to tank just fine. Obviously, if you have someone that's spec'd balls deep into the Vanguard tree and the weapon and shield tree, they're going to be a lot more defensive. But in general, I think with the guard generation that we have and our self-sustainability through the Reaver tree, that you can do just fine. Obviously, I'm playing through on Nightmare with the entire party at level 20, and I mean, I'm face rolling the entirety of the game. Like, I think I've died like once in like the last 7 episodes of the walkthrough, so I think Bull does his job just fine. Either way though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. In terms of what we are going to do next, more than likely I will touch on an archer build using Sarah, which will also give me a chance to look at Tempest some. So either way, make sure to stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys next time with more Dragon Age Inquisition.